Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I turned 30 on a Thursday. I remember waking up that morning with this quiet anticipation, the kind you don't say out loud because you don't want to sound childish. My wife, Marley, had fallen asleep early the night before, so I figured she might have planned something for later. We'd been together 6 years, married for 4, and even though the spark had dimmed in places, she'd never completely forgotten anything meaningful. At least that's what I believed. But that morning, she barely looked up from the mirror as she curled her hair. "Did you need something?" she asked, eyes focused on her reflection. "No," I said, waiting for her to say happy birthday the way spouses do. Casually, warmly, like a habit built on love. But nothing came. She sprayed her perfume and grabbed her bag. "I'm heading out with the girls tonight," she said. "Don't wait up. We're doing a late dinner." I blinked. "Tonight? It's Thursday." "Yeah," she shrugged. "We planned it last week." I waited 1 heartbeat, then 2, for the moment her expression would shift, for the realization to land. But she just slipped on her shoes, humming softly. That's when it hit me. She didn't forget. She just didn't care. When she finally stepped out the door, I sat at the edge of the bed replaying her tone, her indifference, the weeks of emotional distance, the late-night group hangs, the sudden secretive phone habits, the way she started dressing like she was auditioning for someone else's admiration. Something inside me, something calm, cold, and strangely steady, clicked into place. I didn't confront her. I didn't text. I didn't call. I simply opened my phone and tapped the location app we had shared ever since an early road trip. I hadn't used it in years, but she still had it on. A small blinking dot appeared instantly. Not at a restaurant, not downtown, not anywhere she said she'd be, but at a hotel on the west side of the city. Room 304. I stared at the number for a few seconds, feeling the kind of silence that isn't quiet at all. It roars, it pulses, it burns without leaving smoke. I didn't feel jealous. I didn't even feel devastated. I felt freed, like the truth had finally unclenched its fingers and stopped hiding. I showered. I dressed. And I drove. The hotel was nicer than I expected. Warm lighting, soft carpeting, a lobby that smelled like citrus. I walked up to the front desk where a young guy named Keaton stood. His name tag had a little silver star sticker on it like he'd earned some kind of Employee of the Month patch. "Hey," I said with the calmness of someone who had already accepted the end. "I need a cake delivered to room 304. With a note." Keaton blinked. We don't usually take custom requests unless." I slid a $100 bill across the counter. He suddenly became the most cooperative man alive. "What would you like the note to say?" I looked him dead in the eye. "Happy birthday to me. Enjoy the divorce." He swallowed, nodded slowly, and typed it into the little system like he was entering nuclear launch codes. "Do you want to sign it?" he asked. "No," I said. "She'll know." I walked out before the cake even left the kitchen. I didn't need to see the delivery. I didn't want a confrontation. I wanted consequences, clean, silent, undeniable consequences. As I sat in my car, I watched her location dot. It didn't move. Not for 5 minutes. Then 10. Then 20. And then suddenly it started bouncing. She was pacing. I could imagine the scene as clearly as if I were standing inside the room. The knock on the door, the confusion on her face, the frosting-covered message glaring up at her, the cold realization that the lie she'd rehearsed had just collapsed. My phone buzzed. "Marley, call me. Right now." Then another. "Marley, Elias, where are you? We need to talk." And then, "Marley, please, it's not what you think." The classic script. Predictable enough to be insulting. I didn't reply. Instead, I began driving home, the city lights passing like quiet witnesses. I wasn't angry, not anymore. Anger implies you still want something. No, what I felt was clarity. A kind of grown-up stillness I'd never known before. When I pulled into our driveway, her shoes were still by the door, her jacket still hanging on the hook, the evidence of a life we built together standing there unchanged. Except now, I could see every piece of it differently. The truth has that effect. Tilts the room. My phone buzzed again. Marley, I'm coming home. Please don't do anything stupid. But she had already done the only stupid thing that mattered. And the cake had delivered the message she never expected to receive. By the time Marley stepped through the door, I was sitting at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, calm as a winter lake. She froze the moment she saw me. Her eyes were wide, panicked, something flickering behind them that I hadn't seen in years. Fear. She stammered. I raised a hand, stopping her. Don't. Just sit. She sank into the chair across from me, hands twisting the strap of her bag like a nervous fidget. There was no excuse that could work now. The cake wasn't just frosting and sponge. It was clarity. It was honesty delivered in the coldest, sweetest way possible. She opened her mouth again, and I waited. I let the silence stretch. Finally, she whispered, You know, don't you? I know, I said softly. Everything. Her shoulders sagged. The first sign of vulnerability I'd seen from her in months. I didn't gloat. I didn't yell. I just watched, quietly, as the panic she'd carried for weeks began to crack. She looked down at the note in her hand, the one the hotel had texted her a picture of. My words, simple, cold, happy birthday to me. Enjoy the divorce. I could see it sinking in, the realization that her actions, her lies, her indifference, had consequences that weren't just imagined. They were delivered. And I hadn't done anything rash. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't barged into the hotel. I had simply let reality speak. Marley finally lifted her eyes to mine. They were wet now. Regret, fear, and something like comprehension. I didn't mean to. I shook my head. It's not about intention anymore. It's about respect. And you chose your priorities. She tried to speak again, but the words faltered. I saw the cogs turning behind her eyes. She realized that the illusion she'd clung to, her freedom, her secrecy, her little escapades, was over. And the person she'd been ignoring, dismissing, and taking for granted had finally stopped playing along. For a moment, I wondered if she'd cry, beg, or yell. But none of it came. There was only a quiet tension, a tightrope between what had been and what was now unavoidable. I leaned back, the calm spreading through me like sunlight across a cold floor. I wanted us to celebrate my birthday together. But you forgot or chose to forget. That's fine. I've learned something today. What have you learned? She asked, voice trembling. That I can trust myself to respond to dishonesty with truth. That I don't need to chase someone who doesn't want to be caught. And that sometimes, clarity hurts less than illusions. Her lips quivered. She opened her mouth again, but this time I interrupted. Not unkindly, just firmly. You don't get a second chance to pretend the first one never happened. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not when I see things clearly. She sat there, stunned. Her hair falling around her shoulders like a curtain she could no longer hide behind. I could see her mind racing. And I could see, finally, that the power she thought she had, over me, over my choices, over our story, was gone. We didn't fight. We didn't scream. There were no dramatics. No cinematic confrontations. Just the quiet acknowledgement that our chapter had closed. And it wasn't messy, it wasn't explosive. It was complete. I stood, walked over to the counter, and poured myself another coffee. She didn't move. She didn't argue. She just watched, realizing that control had shifted, not through violence or anger, but through awareness and self-respect. You really did this? She said softly. I did, I replied, and I don't regret it. Her shoulders slumped. There was a heaviness in the room now, one that wasn't mine to carry. For months, I'd felt invisible, dismissed, a ghost in the house I helped build. Now she could feel it. The absence I had been pretending didn't hurt me. She swallowed hard. I guess I didn't think it would hit me like this. That's because you never paid attention, I said quietly. You forgot birthdays, you forgot what we were supposed to mean to each other, and you forgot how to respect the people who love you. I didn't forget. That's the difference. She looked at me and for the first time that day really looked. And I saw fear, yes, but also clarity. A lesson learned too late. And I felt nothing but calm. I picked up my coat. I have work tomorrow. I'll see you around. She nodded mutely. No promises, no excuses, no manipulation. Just quiet acknowledgement. And that was enough. The front door closed behind me. The sunlight outside felt sharper, colder, but somehow purer than it ever had before. I realized something simple. Freedom isn't about being unburdened by others. It's about trusting yourself enough to act with integrity, even when no one else notices. That day, on my 30th birthday, I didn't just grow older. I grew stronger, and Marley, I hoped, would grow a little wiser. I smiled to myself as I walked down the street. 30 wasn't just a number anymore. It was a beginning,